Hey guys, welcome to this week of Persistent Hope. As is my habit at the start of each week, I want to spend a few moments with you on the YouTube channel. As you know, you get to watch me do the recording for the radio, and then we go a little deeper. And this week I'm going to talk about the wisdom of God. And Connie and I have just returned from about a 10-day trip. We went out to Montana and served at a camp where our daughter Melissa was speaking. And it was so great. I grew up in the West. And to be back where the mountains are and to see the beauty of the Rockies was such a treat. And be in the car with my favorite pal, my wife, Con, and just for us to be together, it was a good thing. And God used that to kind of refresh our hearts, and it's just been a sweet journey. So as we look at God's wisdom today, I trust it will encourage your heart. And remember that whatever you're going through, it may not make sense to you. Have you caught that new Shane and Shane song? We're fighting a battle that's already been won. I love that line, but my favorite part of the whole song is the two lines that come before that. When it says, talking about God, it says, I don't know what you're doing. And I got to tell you right now in my life, there are times I'm just saying, Lord, I don't know what you're doing. Our life is so strange. It's so different than what we ever thought it would be at this time in our lives. And yet it's cool. It's certainly not a little bit of a lament, but it's mostly just, wow, we get to walk with you in this journey, and that's a privilege. But the line of the song says, I don't know what you're doing, but I know what you've done. And then it says, we're fighting a battle that's already been won. So for you, if you're like me, there may be things going on that you can't quite make sense of. And truly, life is a battle, whether you deal with the brokenness of our culture, the woundedness of our relationships, or simply the evil of the enemy. We're all in the scuffle, but God is victorious. His victorious right hand is all we need. So trust it. Your heart will be encouraged today. Hi, this is Pastor Dave. Welcome to Persistent Hope. Each week we're taking a look at an aspect of God's character. Each week I am praying that you will find hope in what I share with you. That's what Persistent Hope is for. Persistent Hope is a ministry that exists to provide hope to people. Hope that's persistent. Hope that perseveres. Hope that lasts. Now, as I have mentioned at the start of each of my weekly talks, we've been taking each week to look at a characteristic of God, because how we view God affects how we view ourselves. So today, I want to talk about God's characteristic of wisdom. God's wisdom. He sees, he knows. Now, I think you'd agree with me, there's a big difference between knowledge and wisdom. I think we'd all agree that knowledge is exploding, but wisdom seems to be shrinking. God is wise. We see that in his creation. Proverbs chapter 31 verse 9 says, by wisdom the Lord laid the earth's foundation. By understanding he set the heavens in place. Then in Psalm chapter 104 verse 24 it says, how many are your works, O Lord? In wisdom you made them all. The earth is full of your creation. Connie and I just returned from a trip to Montana where we went and volunteered at a camp. It's located just north of Yellowstone National Park, so you can imagine how beautiful it was. Everywhere where you looked was a postcard of beauty. To me, it doesn't take much faith to see a loving God who has put all of this in front of us so we can see his wisdom. Have you ever stopped to think about the wisdom involved in creation, the interconnectedness, the balance of one to the other? Just look at nature and you see the wisdom of God. But we can also see the wisdom of God when we just, take a look at our own bodies. Psalm 139 verse 14 says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Our works are wonderful, and I know that full well. Your works are wonderful, and I know that full well. Just think. You know, our skeletal system has 200 bones. Our kidney has 280 miles of tiny tubes for purifying our blood. Our heart pumps over 100,000 times a day. Now that's moving 5,000 gallons of blood with over 12,000 miles of vessels, and that's just in each body. Just take a look at your hand for a moment. See the brilliance of God's wisdom and how He created us. Look, I know we're living in a time when not a lot seems to make sense, but you can have hope in knowing there is one who sits on the throne, who is in control, who is wise. He knows you, He loves you, and He never changes. And man, are you an amazing display of His wisdom. Hey, I've got an assignment for you today. Sometime just bow your head and simply pray this: God, thank you for your wisdom. God, thank you for your wisdom. I'll talk more with you on Wednesday. God bless. Okay, let's go a little deeper in this whole idea of wisdom and how creation shows it. And I'm going to assume a lot of you are probably familiar with that beautiful passage in Romans chapter 12, verse 1 and 2. Remember where it says that? And I kind of learned it in King James and kind of have picked up some other phrases, but it says, look, brothers and sisters. In fact, I think the message says, in view of your everyday life, look, brothers and sisters, present your bodies as a living sacrifice to God, holy and acceptable. It's a reasonable act of worship. And then Phillips says, the Phillips translator paraphrase says, and don't let the world around you squeeze you into its mold, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you can prove that God's will is good and acceptable and perfect. Familiar with that verse? Greatest act of worship, present ourselves to God, who we are, what we are, and give it to Him and invite Him to take control. What you may not know, and remember, the Bible we look at, when it was written, it didn't have chapters and verses. So if you look at the chapter before the end of Romans chapter 11, you find that there was a thought being developed that wrapped up with verses 1 and 2 of Romans 12. And at the end of chapter 11, verses 33 through 36, it's saying, look this, oh, the depth and the riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God, how unsearchable are His ways and His paths beyond tracing out. Then it goes on to ask, who's ever been His counselor? And it goes on to say, for of you, through you, to you, all things belong to you. All things is your glory. Here's my point. If you're going to really give yourself over to God, you're going to have to recognize you can't figure out what He's doing. Frankly, I like knowing. I like figuring things out. I like seeing a little clarity up ahead. But the reality is there's so much of life that isn't clear. There's so many times when I don't know what's going on. Is that true for you? But you see, my commitment to God isn't based on, okay, now that it makes sense, you can have my life. It's like, nope. In the midst of this world and my season of life and wherever I may be, I'm going to present myself to you. So if you really want to come to know the wisdom of God in your life, let go. That's where the world begins to see the hope that we have. And that's why Peter reminds us, look, be prepared to give an answer when people who are watching you ask for the reason of the hope that you have. I trust you will, again, for the umpteenth time, present yourself to God and say, God, here I am. Use me for your glory.